We're having a look at instrumentation. How does it work? What is it in terms of elements and features? What do you need to discuss in regards to it, especially when referring to it in with solo taxonomy? So here we go when we talk about instrumentation. So basically, we are talking about what instruments you hear in a piece of music. So there are mainly 6 types of musical instruments. There are vocals, there are woodwind, there is brass, there's percussion, there is strings, and then there is computer generated MIDI or electronic instruments. Basically, nearly every single instrument falls in these 6 categories. Okay, so when we're talking about vocals in particular, we are talking about the ones or where people's ranges, vocal range. Now, one of the great things about vocals is that they can actually sing every single note. So they can, we talk about semitones, but vocalists can also sing quarter tones, which is in between semitones. There are the main voice pitches, which are soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, but there are many others, like, for example, you may say that there is a baritone, you may say a countertenor. There are other ranges, but these 4 are the general ones for vocals. Then we move on to instruments. Now, most instruments date back, well, we refer to them as orchestral instruments, or how they fit in the orchestral family. So there is a video for you to have a look at and to hear what an orchestra sounds like. So when we're talking about woodwind instruments, they are instruments that were originally made from wood, but generally, to tell them apart from the brass, that they have a mouthpiece that uses a reed or that you blow over. So if we're having a look at the classical instruments, so to speak, in woodwind, we're talking about the piccolo, the oboe, the flute, the corongle, the clarinet, the bassoon, the bass clarinet, and the contrabassoon. So then again, there is a video there if you want to have a look about more information in regards to woodwinds. We then have the brass. So the brass instruments are no longer really made of brass. They're made out of metal. However, they got their name because they were made out of that in the 17th century. All brass instruments, you need to produce a sound by putting your lips together and blowing through. So we call that a raspberry. And so the instruments are a trumpet, French horn, trombone, tuba, cornet, and a tenor horn. Now, also, just as a bit of a reference point, a saxophone is not a brass instrument. The reason why is because you don't put your lips together to produce a sound. It is actually a woodwind instrument because it has a reed, and so you blow through it. Yet again, there is a video that you can have a look at and watch to see to hear the different woodwind instruments. You then have percussion. Now, percussion, there are so many different instruments, but basically a percussion instrument is something that you either hit or strike to produce a sound. Some examples are a snare drum, a timpani, a bass drum, piano, triangle, cymbal, xylophone, and glockenspiel. Now, there are asterisks around some of these instruments. They're the piano, the xylophone, and the glockenspiel. And the reason why is because these are pitched instruments. They actually have a pitch to them. They have different pitches. So you have 2 types of percussion instruments, ones that are pitched and ones that are not pitched. We then go to the strings, and the strings basically include the violin, the viola, the cello, the double bass, and the harp. And again, there is a video there. They produce a sound by either being plucked or bowed to produce a sound. Then there is instruments that go between different genres. So we have a jazz instrument, and generally the jazz instruments, there's 2 categories of jazz instruments. You have your solo instruments, and then you have your rhythm section. So your solo instruments can be, but are not limited to, trumpets, saxophones, trombones, and vocals. But then you have your rhythm section, which are piano, the double bass, or the bass guitar, or the drum kit. Now those 3 are the ones that ultimately keep the rhythm. They also keep the foundation to the chords or the harmony that's being played below. So when you talk about jazz instruments, you're talking about them in 2 types. The solo instruments and then also the rhythmic section or the rhythm section. You then have your contemporary music instruments, and these are the ones that are typically found in a rock band. So there's electric guitar, which is the lead, the electric guitar, which is rhythm, bass guitar, drum kit, and then ultimately, don't forget, there is then the vocals. Lastly, there is computer-generated sounds. So predominantly these came about in the 20th century, or they did come out in the 20th century, and these are sounds that are produced by computer. Most commonly found in electronic music, such as techno and dubstep, but not limited to. So when we're talking about these in our music analysis, we might be thinking about it in this way. So when we think about multi-structural, we're talking about what are the instruments used in the song? What do we hear? And that will give you multi-structural. Relational is where you tell me what instruments you hear and where are they being played or where they are not being played. Extended abstract is then you telling me what type of a group it is. What type of ensemble is the group that you hear? Is it a typical ensemble? If so, why or why not? Was it usual for that time or period style to see that formation in that group? And how do you know that information? What significance do the instruments have? So what's the significance of the instruments? Why are they important to the song? What makes the song different because these instruments are in there? And then ultimately, or the last, not ultimately, but another question in extended abstract could be is how are they used? So are they used differently in this ensemble or in this piece of music? Are they used as more of a background or are they used in the forefront? Are they swapped between the two parts? Are they used in different textures? So that is instrumentation for you. Hopefully you can start your assignment so you have an understanding of what you need to talk about when it comes to instrumentation. So good luck and mā te wā.